as being streamed live on YouTube. So if you somehow get disconnected and you cannot join the room because, well, we are overly oversubscribed right now. Like, we only have 100 spots on Zoom, but since we are broadcasting this on YouTube, like if you get disconnected and you cannot join re-enter the Zoom, you can always go to our YouTube live, and someone from Restore will be also there to moderate the YouTube chat as well. So you can join like the full experience of this webinar on YouTube as well.
Perhaps it would be a good idea to put the link to the YouTube into the chat. Somebody.
Yes, I think Marina can do that. So in the meantime, I think it will be great for us to know a little bit about each other. So you can write your name, the organization you are working with, or you belong to, or institutions you belong to, your countries, or even the ecosystem that you are restoring or protecting. On either on YouTube chats if you are joining on YouTube, or on Zoom if you are joining in Zoom. And later, we will have a small breakout room session for 5 minutes so that you can get to know each other in a smaller group. And during the time of the webinar, please mute your microphone unless we say otherwise. So yeah, so you can always open your microphone in the breakout room, but not in the waiting in the main room. So in the main room, if you raise your hand, we will let you speak. So I think, yeah, we can start. Hello, everyone. I hope that everyone is in good health. So welcome to Restore Community Webinar. So the goal of Restore Community Webinar is to connect the members of Restore Community, helping to share knowledge and hard-earned lesson with each other, and also finding each other and start collaborating. So today's topic is storytelling for nature. Why and how stories drive impact. So we all know that 99% of nature projects are unseen, and the vast majority of the incredible conservation and restoration efforts happening worldwide go unnoticed. And this is one of the main reasons why Restore exists. And we believe by telling compelling stories, we can bring these projects to the forefront to raise awareness and drive meaningful impact for our planet. And throughout this webinar, with the help of our two incredible speakers, we will explore the power of storytelling in the realm of nature conservation and restoration. And we will delve into why stories matter, how they can inspire action, and the practical techniques you can employ to craft impactful narratives. So for information, again, this webinar is broadcast live on YouTube and being recorded. We are oversubscribed for the Zoom webinar. So in case your colleagues can't join the Zoom, they can join us on YouTube. And our Restore colleagues will be there on YouTube to help moderate the chat box as well. So if you get disconnected from this room and can't re-enter, you can always join us in YouTube. Just a little bit introduction. So I am Anissa, a Restore Regional Engagement Lead for Southeast Asia. And I am here with my colleagues, Mick Santos, Restore Regional Engagement Leads for Europe, and Marina, Regional Engagement Lead for Brazil and Portuguese-speaking countries. And in YouTube, there will be Himabeth, our colleagues, our Regional Engagement Lead for South Asia. And we also have Iman Shihab, who is our community support. Yeah, so before we continue, so let's have a bit of ice-breaking activity to know more about all of you. Because you are matters in our community. So we will have a little polls that you can access through menti.com. And you can use, so Marina will share the screen for the menti.com. Yeah. Yes, so you can use the code. Okay, let's wait for, yeah. So you can go to
Sorry, Anissa, the link is in the chat too.
Yeah. You can use you can go at menti.com and use this code to 8791452, or clicking the link in the chat box, because I think some people on YouTube cannot click the link on the Zoom chat box. Yeah. So yeah, who are you in the restoration or conservation community? Are you a funder or intermediary funder or project implementers or service providers or researcher or restoration and conservation enthusiasts? So yeah, I think most of you are project implementer. We will add around 2 more minutes for everyone to fill in. Yeah. If you want, you can always introduce yourself in the chat box as we go, and also interacting with other people in the chat box as well. So yeah, 24 people say they are project implementers, some are funders, and then quite a lot also restoration and conservation enthusiasts. Some are researcher and service provider. Okay, let's wait a bit more. Okay, I think we have it. Oh, there's still some more. Okay, great. So we in our audience, like most of you are project implementer, and I think we can move to the next question. So you can on your Mensi there will be a new questions to be answered. So what are your main challenges when it comes to storytelling? So whether you have challenges to access your relevant audience, or you have limited capacity or time, or limited communication skills or confidence, or you have limited means of communication. For example, if you are working in remote areas and you don't have a good internet connection, it basically limits your means of communication with people outside your region. So let's wait for a couple more minutes. In the meantime, there are also some people who are adding their answer in the chat box for the first question. There's Irina, who is a researcher. And then I think lack of confidence is also one of the main challenge. Financing. We have actually like a webinar, our previous community webinar actually cover financing. So you can always go to our YouTube channel and then see like the previous webinar from the YouTube channel, and actually like our our previous webinar basically cover the financing part. So you can always check them out. Okay, I think we have it. Oh yeah, there's still some more. We're still filling in the polls. Okay. Oh, there's still more. Yeah, and someone also said in the chat box, limited communication skills. Okay, I think we have it. So most of you have difficulties and challenge when it comes to access to relevant audience and limited capacity or time. It's totally understandable because, like, you know, we want to spend our time as well in the fields planting trees, protecting the areas. And of course, some of you don't have, enough time to spare for, when it comes to storytelling. And some of you also have limited communication skill and confidence to do that. And a few of you say it's like you have limited means of communication. So thank you very much. So I think after this, we can continue to our breakout room. So we will have a 5 minutes breakout room. Each room should have around five participants. And inside this breakout room, so each person will basically have around 1 minute to introduce themselves. Basically, who are you, where you are working, from which organization or institution you are from, and also a little bit stories about your restoration or conservation project. So I think Mick will assign you to the breakout room. So just sit tight, and then there will be a button that says join. So if you see that button, you can click that join and then go.
Yes. Yes. These breakout rooms should show in a minute. Marina, I believe you're the host, so I'm not able to create these. Can you try them? Create the breakouts? Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Yeah, you can click join in now. And see you all in the main room in 5 minutes.
There's some people coming in. So these breakout rooms, just to introduce yourselves to each other. John and NG, you can stay. Ah, see John left.
Should I also join, Mike?
Yeah, if you want, you can join actually, if you're curious about our
Okay.
audience.
Okay.
So for people on YouTube, I know that you cannot join the breakout rooms on Zoom, but you can always chat with others in the YouTube chats. And also, again, introduce yourself and tell a little bit stories about your restoration and conservation activities.
Sorry, Anissa. Thomas Richardson here. I'm actually in breakout room 11 on my desktop, but there's an audio issue with my desktop. I've just signed in here on my mobile phone, and I was wondering, can I get into the room?
Okay, let me check again.
Very sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry, is it room? The number of the room?
No, it's 11.
11.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I just assigned you to the wrong one.
No, it's actually an audio issue with my desktop.
Bring me up to speed.
Can you assign me to room 11 if you can? Sorry. Yes. Oh. Hey guys, sorry, Thomas Richardson here. Listen, I had an awful issue with my desktop. Unfortunately, this room's going to close in 30 seconds. I'm Irish-based. We're an Irish-based startup, and we're creating a radical, transparent platform for products and services to be able to sponsor projects around the world, and also then be able to link them back directly to a product or a service down to the square meter. We do this via blockchain and an interactive dashboard. It's in its early stages. We have test plots in Cameroon, Ireland, and the Philippines. Yep. And here we go. We're going to get cut out now.
Yes,
right.
thank
Sorry
you.
about that, guys.
Okay, it seems like everyone is coming back. So I hope that you get to know each other better. And I hope you enjoy the conversation and know who are you going to collaborate with after this webinar, because collaboration is very, very crucial to restoration and conservation actions, you know, like the bigger the action, the better. So, and I think yeah, we can continue. So now I would like to invite our two esteemed guests, John Liu and Angie Ngashangva. So John is a filmmaker and ecologist who for many years have been studying and then also documenting and communicating about ecosystem function and dysfunction in terrestrial ecosystems. So John also founded the ARC movement and is an ambassador of Common Land. So how are you, John? You are still mute.
A bit cold in Beijing, but other than that, I'm fine. Thank you.
Great to hear.
So what would you like to do?
I will also introduce Angie. So Angie is the co-founder and chairperson of Rainforest Biodiversity of Valley, and he is passionate about studying and restoring rainforest species while engaging with traditional knowledge with local villagers and citizen science and also students. So how are you, Angie? Angie, are you there?
Okay. Hello. Yeah, I can hear. Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you for welcoming.
Okay, great. So so first of all, this format will be more of talks rather than presentations, but of course, both of the speakers will come to share presentation after this. And first, I have one question for both of you, for both John and Angie. So could you share with us why and how you first engaged with ecosystem restoration? And is there a story that contributed to your work in this field? So I think for this question, John can have a go first. John?
Okay, well, I was a professional observer. So I was a television producer and cameraman, and I was covering major stories in the 1980s and 90s, the rise of China from poverty and isolation, the collapse of the Soviet Union, Tiananmen, various things, summits, and terrorism. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I was extremely tired of journalism, and I didn't like the direction it was going. And I was hired by the World Bank to go out and document the restoration of the upper and middle reaches of the Yellow River in the Lus Plateau. So I think that's probably, if anybody has been looking at my films, or if you go to my academia page, which I put in together with my contact information in the chat, you can find most of the films and published work I've done. It's fairly extensive. And when I saw that you could restore large-scale degraded ecosystems, I realized that that was more important than all of the political, economic, cultural things that I had seen, because really the time frame is totally different. It's into really enormous time frames, but it also shows that life and death are the same, that's part of a continuous living system. And it just felt more important and more interesting than the type of hubris and domination and struggles for selfish reasons that I kept seeing in journalism. So that was why I studied this. It made it was more meaningful for me, and I think ultimately more useful.
Thank you, John. So what about you, Angie? So could you also share with us why and how you first engaged with ecosystem restoration?
Yes. First of all, we are from a small village. It is in India, Manipur, a very small village. From here, we have a sizable land of degraded land, and there are so many unprecedented events like flood, sinking, water scarcity. In reality, it is we are in one of the most biodiverse, rich region of the world. In spite of this rich biodiversity, the people remains very poor, and despite all this rich biodiversity, the people here are very poor. So it bothers my mind why biodiversity is so rich and why the people are so poor. So it always intrigued my mind. At the same time, when I go home, most of the villagers are agrarian. 90% of our village, that is about 4,000, 90% of 4,000 are engaged in agricultural activities. And they have a lot of questions that intrigues me. Why there is insect swarming? Why the rainfall pattern has changed? Why the flower colors have changed? All these questions, and I think it is interrelated with the climate changes. That's how I started taking interest on the ecosystem restorations. That's how I started involving with my villagers and started involving with the students. And slowly, we founded an organization, what we call the Rainforest Biodiversity of Pali. It is based in Pali itself. It's a community-based organization. So we started working on this ecosystem restorations, and it's because of all the problems which we face in my place. That's how we begin our story.
Yes, thank you, Angie. And we have one question, more question for you as well, Angie. So many indigenous people and cultures like yours have rich tradition of storytelling. What do you think contemporary narratives can learn from such a local and traditional bodies of knowledge? So how do we learn from, you know, this tradition of storytelling?
Okay. Actually, we are an indigenous community, and most of our history, most of our stories are passed on through words of mouths. All the knowledge, all the indigenous knowledge are passed on through this word of mouth from generation to generations. And when we talk about the ecosystem restorations, what they practice, what they observe, and how they live with the environment is all about conservations. And I think and I think this ecosystem restoration, what we can learn from them is, I think ecosystem restoration is not, it should be a practical one. And most of the time we are approaching the problem with the theoretical one. But I think this restoration is a practical thing, and that we can learn from these indigenous peoples. And this, when we talk about restoration, I think we are talking about those environment, where the environment is pristine, where the environment is well balanced, where the environment is well balanced and pristine. And I think that stage is in our case, it was around 1940s. In our case, and in the other case, I don't know, maybe 1940, 1960, maybe 1920 also. So those stories which they follow in 1940 is required if we are to restore the environment. I think their story, their practice is essential if we are to restore this environment to that conditions. So that these things we can learn from them, from this indigenous knowledge, which is practicals. At the same time, it also have weaknesses. In that way, I think, in that sense, we may need some of the scientific interventions. Let's say in the scientific intervention, we may need that one, and because they are not in the mainstream. One thing is, traditional knowledge are not in the mainstream. There are also reasons why they are not in the mainstream. They are not be able to be in the mainstream because most of these are no more practice or impracticable or obsolete. That means it is not a theory, it is a practical one. So we need a platform, we need an avenue. And here I would like to appreciate about the Restore. You are the guys who heard the unheard, who reached the unreached, and you give a platform. No? So I think we need such kind of platform to express those traditional knowledges. So there are things we can learn from this traditional knowledge, which is time-tested. If we are to return, if we are to restore, if we are to restore that pristine nature, if we are those which were in the past, we really need their knowledge, that practical knowledge.
Yes, thank you, NG. So yeah, like actually on Restore, we have a place we call like description, where you can basically tell the stories of your restoration or conservation activities. And I think this is what you are doing, NG, for your projects as well. I mean, you can always check NG's sites on Restore and see like the amazing stories that you have about indigenous people and indigenous knowledge. So yeah, and now I have a question for John. So because you are working with filmmaking, how can storytelling use to bridge the gap between different cultures and demographics in promoting ecosystem restoration globally? Because I think like for film, I think it can reach more audience, but there are some places in the world who also doesn't have like that much access to film, but I think in this case as well, like a film can have like a huge impact for like reaching out more audience.
Well, at the risk of being a little bit controversial, I would say that we have to be very careful about storytelling as well, because belief systems are not the same as truth. So it seems to me, when I'm researching evolutionary succession or symbiosis, or how the massive complexity of life co-evolved and co-created systems which altered the physics on the planet, lowered the surface temperatures, process and moderate the hydrology, the weather, and the climate, that this is not a belief system. This is just truth. So if you understand it and you align human behavior with that knowledge, then that's not the same as being, believing somebody because they told you a story, or perhaps in the case of what's going on now, often is believing in memes or impressionism, where people don't have a deep understanding, but they accept what they hear. I would just point out the carbon trading, carbon concepts. This is not really helping. Since I started seeing this appear in 1997 to now, it hasn't really done much for restoration, because it has diverted monies and resources to people who don't really know what they're talking about, and benefited a minority without actually making the big potential of restoration or of mitigation and adaptation to climate change possible. So I think what I've been seeing, and what we've been trying to do with the ecosystem restoration communities, I try not to use acronyms, because if you don't know what the acronym means, you just didn't say anything to anybody.
Yeah, sure.
So ecosystem restoration camps and communities are more or less living laboratories where different experiments can take place, and different people can understand what is happening with their local ecology and how they affect it, their actions affect it. And what we see when we study this anywhere in the world is that it's possible to rehabilitate large-scale damaged ecosystems. And when you understand that, then the inference is that actually we could restore all degraded lands on the earth, that it is theoretically possible. But as Ong said, it's not a theoretical issue, it's a physical issue. We have physical disruptions. And so the only way to do this, and that's another reason why storytelling is a means to an end rather than the end itself. It's a tool to help us to understand and to act correctly, but it isn't really a goal in itself. So that's what I've learned about that. And I highly recommend that if you get a chance to look at the restoration stories, but don't take them as a dogma, but look at them and say, how does that relate? What does that really mean? So that we're ultimately going to have a collective intelligence, because everybody has thought about it and studied what they don't understand about it. And if humanity comes up to the point where everybody on the earth realizes that ecological function is the basis of life, then we have the chance to totally change, not just restore these things, but to base our economy on ecological function. And when the economy is based on ecological function, then it can grow. And if the economy continues to be based on extraction and overconsumption, it can't grow anymore, because the more it grows, the more it destroys the living systems. So That's what I've been hoping for.
Yeah.
Not stories, but truth, and
Mhm.
not impressionism, but knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah. And based on your experience, what is the role of technology, including platforms and social media, in disseminating this, this truth and knowledge?
Well, I mean, probably nobody here would have ever heard of me if it wasn't for satellites and video cameras and recording technology and internet. So, the only reason that I can speak to you is because of this technology. So again, it's a tool, and it's a useful tool. But if you measure the amount of things that are on the internet and you question, like, well, how much of it is useful and how much of it is garbage, maybe even mental pollution, then actually, it's not a good ratio, I would say. So it's just a tool. It can be used well and carefully, but it has high risks because misinformation can be distributed through these means as well. So it's really important that everybody is actually focused on their own study, and they can take what they learn. And that's what we see in the ecosystem restoration camps and communities, that they're actually growing living soils, and they can build and participate in creating botanical sanctuaries that can protect the most endangered biology. And they can understand the symbiotic relationship between all living things, and also an understanding of how those living things alter the physics. So when we study evolutionary succession, we see that actually the biology altered the physical situations by holding the moisture close to the earth, reducing the surface temperatures, creating an oxygenated atmosphere, freshwater systems, and soil fertility. But after we began to kill the megafauna, or after we started to do large scale animal husbandry, or after we started to do cropping with plowing and monocultures and then chemicals and so on, we have massively degraded the Earth's potential. So we can pretend that our economy got bigger because we have some cars and airplanes and computers, but we have to tell the truth and realize that actually it got much smaller because we destroyed the potential for life on Earth. And this is the only planet we know that has a fresh, has an oxygenated atmosphere, fresh water, soil fertility, and biodiversity. So,
Yeah, thank you. So, well, from what you said, like first we have to know the truth. Later on, we need to disseminate it like in a way that is true to the facts. That is, like that we need this earth, we need the soil, we need the plants, we need the animals as well. So yeah, and next I have a question for both of you, for both Angie and John. So as we face past complex sociological challenges, what is the role of hope in storytelling? Because, like as John mentioned, we have to fight like this in misinformation or this disproportionate of information when that actually have a role in making people choose like the products that they use, the service that they use. So how can we balance the need of to communicate the severity of the issues while also maintaining motivation for positive change? Because we know like there's disproportionate information, like for example on the internet, that makes us quite pessimistic, basically. Yeah. So Angie?
This question is very complex for me, and we are not used to that kind of at that level. But as far as I am about or these things, how to communicate the positive things about or these things. There are so many. Say, for I will talk to. I will answer in my case. In our case, it is say for instance, most of the people are unaware. They are the or awareness level is very low. So most of the things are committed, whether it's or environmental or whether it's they are where those things are committed unknowingly rather than knowingly. So I think in that case, we need how we can use the media is say like how we can use the media. Let me show in my example using your restore. Say how I would use the information means, say for example, so the modern how we get use of modern information, like say can you see,
Yeah, we can see
are you
your
able to
screen.
see?
Yeah.
This is the screenshot, how we communicate the knowledge, how we are this is a screenshot from the restore analysis. As you can see from here, the cropland is 0.19 square kilometer. Okay, how we are I mean how we are using the modern technology, how we are communicating, I'm just giving the example. Okay, so from this 0.9 square kilometers, that means 19 hectares or village. This is our village croplands, and it produced 30% of our food grains, which is equivalent to 1% of our 1% of our total land. These things we can communicate to the students, to the community, and we can show them the severity. When I show that one, I think you can see the mismatch. How 4,000 people, 90% people work on 1% of land and produce 30% of its food grains. There's a huge gap, and people are not aware of that. I think if we use such kind of statistics, such kinds of platform, I think we can communicate the severity of the situation, reality of the situations, and not only really, we can further improve the situation also, data also. I think that's how we can communicate in our case. For us, we communicate like that. And that is our way of communication to the people, to realize all the problems, to realize what we can improve, to realize what is our weakness. So I think we can use in that way platform, and I think it will be a good message. It can serve as a good message for the people also. It shows there are lots of things to do. We have lots of work to do, and I think that's a good message. At the same time, it shows also weakness also. It shows a default also. That's how we can use. I think we can use the communication systems or the platform, like your platform. That's what I want to say. I think I would do. We do like that. That is our way of communicating the problems. At the same time, conveying our message to the future things.
Yes, thank you, NG. And how about you, John? So how do you think we can balance the need to communicate the severity of the issues and also maintaining this motivation for positive change, encouraging people to act, that it's not too late to act?
Could maybe Mick, you could put on the restoration clip number 3 and just take a look at that. And maybe you'll have to you'll have to stop sharing perhaps.
Oh,
And
yeah.
And Mick, have
Okay.
you got the ability to share?
I believe so. Let's see.
This clip comes from a film called Hope in a Changing Climate. And Hope in a Changing Climate was broadcast on the BBC one day before the Copenhagen COP15 back in 2009. And it shows 15 years of research and documentation. from the upper and middle reaches of the Yellow River. So if it ever comes up and it works, then you'll see a transition between what it was like when we first went out there in the early 1990s and what it ended up looking like in 2009. And you'll also see how the people did it, because it wasn't really done with high tech. So this is what it just started. And if it has no sound, it's okay. Just
do you hear the sound?
No, it should be no sound. Try not to have any sound. But what we saw here was that it was just more or less, degraded. It was desertified almost. But that wasn't exactly accurate, because there was still, say, 300 millimeters to 550 millimeters of rainfall, depending on the latitude. And then what we found was that all the things that the people were doing, they were cutting trees and burning biomass for fuel. And they were growing, cutting all the trees, and then they were growing on the sides of mountains. And then they were free ranging goats and sheep. And so they actually had to stop doing everything that they were doing. So the Chinese government just said, okay, look, we're going to explain this, but you can't do those things anymore. You can't cut trees. You can't grow things on the sides of hills where you're eroding all the soils away. And you can't free range goats and sheep so that they eat everything. But when they banned everything, then they had to give them another livelihood. So they taught them how to do restoration. And in teaching them how to do restoration, they also said, look, most of this land is unsuitable for agriculture. So don't put your goats there. Don't try to grow anything there. Let's release it to nature. And so they divided the land between ecological and economic land. And in the economic land, they were able to build these terraces, and they were able to infiltrate water. And this is in 94 when we went out there for one of our trips. And this is in 2009. So in 15 years, they were able to transform a more or less barren area. And when you understand that the pilot project was 35,000 square kilometers, then you understand that that's the size of Belgium, and it's an enormous area. And when you understand that the biology alters the physics, so the surface temperatures are massively lowered and the moisture is held close to the earth, as well as creating the conditions to allow moisture to infiltrate and be retained, and all the biomass is dying. Each generation of life dies and gives up its body, and it builds up the organic layer, which further restores the ecological cycle, controls the weather and the climate. And finally, in doing this, it massively increased the productivity by reducing the area in production. So this totally changed the outcome for these people, but it didn't lower their income. It increased their income by reducing the area that they had to farm in. So I think you can stop there. And, to me, this was a story of hope, and it certainly was broadcast on the BBC as Hope in a Changing Climate. And it did start people to consider nature-based actions for mitigation and adaptation to climate change. But I don't think we've really understood that it is actually the paradigm shift that determines whether humanity survives or or continues down the path where like it looks like the whole planet is falling apart.
Yeah, incredible. Thank you for sharing the video, John. And I think we have some time, a little bit time for question and answer. So I think related to John's video, there's a question from Melissa, and it's how do we best harness the power of video to get the message of the importance of restoration across to our audiences? Yeah. So yeah, this is how do we best harness the power of video to get the message of the importance of restoration across our audiences?
Well, I think that we probably need to realize that we need to have collective intelligence. So it isn't about individuals talking about it. It's about larger and larger numbers of people not simply talking about it, because it's not a theoretical issue. It's that the rivers don't flow, that the soil is not able to infiltrate and retain moisture, and that the biodiversity has been massively altered, and that the biomass is reduced. So when you understand that the biomass, the total amounts of biomass and the percentages of biomass are the determining factor for the habitats that allow microbes and fungal communities to make geologic materials bioavailable to life forms. So the more that is huge, with huge, if you go to biodynamic agricultural systems, you'll see very dense, deep soils that you fall into. Everybody should be out there filming those things, looking at those things, talking about these things. And then as we look at it, we do it, we talk about it, we restore them. Basically, you can't come to another conclusion. The only possibility you see, well, if you change the amounts of organic material and the biodiversity, and you have a high canopy, and even though you don't change anything else, you get water, it rains, it's fertile, and so on. So what happens is everybody knows that. That then becomes the collective intelligence, and we can act together. Now, what's happening with the television news or the internet is that like belief systems people are being bombarded with misinformation, which makes them like question, well, I wonder, I don't understand that. I don't understand this. So if we don't understand, then, that's ignorance is a pretty good excuse. I have to say, if you're ignorant of how to restore Earth systems, it's unlikely that you're going to restore the entire Earth. But if you're conscious of how you restore Earth systems or how Earth systems function, it's easy to restore the Earth systems, because that's what the Earth wants to do. And so there's nothing actually wrong with the Earth. The problem is with human beings. So, using this tool without an ego, trying to say, well, okay, it's not about me because I'm going to die. It's about life, generations to come, hundreds and thousands of years from now, because there's hundreds and thousands of years of our ancestors in the past, and all indigenous people know this. And so it's only been this reductionist concept in science that has said we're smarter, the things we make are better, our machines are great. And it's not fundamentally true, is the problem with that story.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And talking about indigenous people, I have a question for Angie. Since you are working with indigenous knowledge as well, what are the most important elements or themes in storytelling for conveying a message about importance of conservation and restoration? In your case, like how you in your communities also try to fight misinformation. And I have like one comment in the chat box that said like some people, or not just some, many people, they are often tend to act or to start moving, working, because they are touched by a story instead of just like data, like scientific data.
I'm not able to get the last part. What's that? What does it mean? Please repeat the questions.
Yeah, so basically, what are the most important elements or themes in the storytelling for basically to effectively conveying a message about importance of restoration or conservation, and also like about fighting misinformation. And I have like one person in the chat box that said like he tends to be touched by like good stories rather than just like scientific data. So if we have scientific data, what else can we say to them, to the communities, to make sure, basically to make sure like they will abide or they will follow your recommendation to restore nature?
Okay. So let me answer that first part. That you are which element is the most important? That was the question.
Yeah.
What is the most important? I am not able to get your question exactly.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, what is the most important elements? And besides science, because there are comments that some of the people, they need more than science. Yeah.
Okay. So here, for the indigenous knowledge or traditional knowledge, one of the most important is continuity. If we don't continue that continuity, secondly, a platform, and thirdly, a venue, because this traditional knowledge is not a theory, it's a practice. It requires a venue, it requires a platform like your restore to communicate, to share, to learn, and to understand. No? So, and most important is continuity of that practice is important. If you don't practice that one, if we don't have avenue for practice that one, that traditional knowledge will break down. But people won't be able to do that one. It's a practical things. We have to learn by practice. It is a accumulated knowledge from constantly in the relationship with the natures. So this is like a physical experimental, hands-on training. So it needs continuity. It needs venue or platforms. And the next, what was your the next question? I was not able to get that one very well.
Yeah,
about that misinformation.
Yeah.
Okay. That good. I'm not able to get good story and misinformation. What is what is that?
So
repeat.
basically,
Can you please repeat?
Yeah. So basically, I want to we want to know like what is your experience in fighting misinformation in your communities?
Okay. This is also very difficult. It depends on the individual things, but as like you said, this modern communication, some have good stories, some have this thing like that. But we need dedications, and we need the real story in the sense which the people will practice when the environment is balanced, where the environment was pristine. They have a knowledge about those conditions. So I think if we follow their stories, utilizing our modern science, I think then we can fight those misinformations. When there are so many stories which is mythical, which may not have a little lack of substance, this traditional knowledge. which is difficult to elucidate, which is not well elaborated. At that time, I think we may need scientific interventions. And that's how we can, I think that's how we can demystify those romanticized things, those misinformation things. I think we can demystify using the scientific facts, on the ground, practical things. I think we can only demystify with those things for those misinformation.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. So, so Mick or Marina, do you have like any questions from the audience, or Hima, or from Hima, to be asked to the two of our guests?
Yes, there is one about a call to action at the end of such documentaries and videos, and how important that might be. I thought it might be a good one for John. If he still has some time to get into that.
I'm sorry if you were asking me something. I dropped out for a second.
No worries. There's a question: how important is a call to action as part of storytelling? And I believe at the end of, you know, let's just say as part of a documentary, for example, a film that you've made. What is the role of a call to action there?
Yeah, you could perhaps roll the camps and communities. No, I think it's number 8
Okay.
in the background while I talk about it, perhaps. I would say that on the one hand, it's the audience has some work to do. It's not simply the filmmaker. I again, at the risk of being controversial, a lot of my films I've made because I wanted to, because I wanted to go to these places and study these issues, and I wanted to learn. And there are 2 ways that I can help with people. I can be implicit in where I tell a story, and if you are listening carefully, then you'll understand it. And if I can be explicit and just say, look, this is what it is. And I think that the audience needs to look and make a decision about what they feel. These are places in the camps and communities. This is in Spain, where the first camp was built in the Altiplano. We now have 65 different camps and communities around the world where people are doing restoration. And so as they do restoration, they learn. And it's not up to me to tell them what to do. They're studying what can they do. They're trying to study, what does it mean? How do we do this? And they're also having a good time. So I think that it's important to realize that it's not just a hardship to go do restoration. It's something that you're building a future for the next generation, for the generation, this generation. I'm 70 years old. It's not my future. It's the future of people who are younger, and their children and their children's children, my grandchildren. So I think it's important that you have a sense that we have a chance to change the course of human civilization. And if we don't do that, I think we can already predict what are the outcomes, because you can't infinitely grow based on finite resources. So we need to have an economy which is built on where all the actions of human beings are things which benefit the earth and humanity. And so this is a completely different phenomenon than thinking like, let's make more movies. I mean, even the concept, I've made too many movies now. I've made, I don't know, 50 movies or something. Nobody watches these movies usually. So, it's only when they are useful. And now we're seeing, like, for instance, in Paradise or in Maui or in Turkey or in other places, there are all these horrible things which are happening. And what we've seen is that we can bring people together to react to these kinds of problems. And this changes the psychology.
Lyndon Johnson launched his War on Poverty in Martin County, which is where Camp Appalachia Renewal is located. And even with that, poverty is still prevalent in the area. It's one of the worst impacted regions of the United States in terms of long-term poverty. Our intent is to show that through ecosystem restoration, we can build a platform for sustainable use of these lands that can help create good, fulfilling job prospects for the people of this area.
So what we're seeing is that we could change the economy. And if we did that, it would be more fair. So if we're observing the kind of inequities, the huge diversity, and I mean the unequalness of life, and then we realize that every human being and every living being is a representation of all life since the beginning of time. And so each of us and each of them have a birthright, and you don't have to pay for your birthright. And no one can say, well, you don't deserve to live. We'll just take everything for ourselves. That's grotesque. And so we need to think about this. How can we transform what is now to something else?
Here is a thing with nothing to say. Mountains won't stand in your way. You like to walk as if troubles are behind you. They'll never find you as long as you hide. Oh, you miss the rain, standing with forehead on window pane. Come, oh, bring us your shame. We won't let you flounder, we'll call you by name. You with the sun dripping over your face, nobody knows where you've been. Your arms open wide, greeting strangers like family. Nobody knows all the places you sinned. La 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 la. Here is the thing that I've wanted to say. Darkness won't stand in your way. You hold me now as if nothing will ever break. All the flowers here in your heart. There I go again, bleeding and beating on window pane, crying.
Well, I just think it's a good idea if we all work together and we all tell the truth and we don't have belief systems or dogmas. And so our stories, we have trust, we create trust with one another. And so this is not easy. Actually, restoring soils and hydrology and biomass and biodiversity are easier. But if we don't do this, we can't really change because it's humans that are making the problems. And the earth is just fine. We just need to get aligned with earth systems because we're part of it.
Yes, thank you very much, John. It was really inspiring. And I think this is the end of our talks, our community webinar. I would like to thank John and Angie for your participation in this webinar to share your knowledge as well about the storytelling and then also about how Indigenous people in the story of Indigenous people is important as well. And I think like some people on the chat, they say that they would like to see more about like the presentation that Angie has, and also someone also said asked like where can they find the films of you, John. So probably after this webinar, we will send out a recap of the webinar through email, where you can find like the links to the slides as well as the films. And yeah, we would like to thank you to all participants as well. I hope that this community webinar brings you more knowledge and more connection as well, and you can find people to collaborate. So thank you very much, and I hope you all a very nice rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank
you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. I think John was trying to say something, but he popped out. Let's see.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Hima, also. Thank you, Hima. She's the one who keep on connecting us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
I put something in the chat, and if you go to my academia page, you'll find most of my films and published work. Thank you.
Thank you, John.